Now we'll go into the Galaxy Note 10. So, in general, Rory, what do you think of the Galaxy Note 10 and the 10 Plus?
Well, I mean, it's better than I thought, I think. It turned out better than I thought because when I first saw the leaks, it was like quite gnarly. I was like, oh, no stereo speakers? What? No headphone jack? No micro SD expansion? Like, those are like key things that the Note 9 introduced that made me love the Note 9 so much. And then when it actually launched, it was like, oh, okay, it's not as bad as we thought. Yeah, they did split the difference. I think the biggest thing was that there are now 2 notes instead of just 1, which I have a lot to say on, and I have already shared that on an article in surgeonchow.com, which you can go and read. Shameless plug. But in general, I think they did a good job at encapsulating the idea of the Note.
Yeah.
And for me, the most impressive thing, the thing that just like blew my mind was that screen. It's ridiculous. It looks absurd. It's like, you know, I don't know if you remember, but like back in the day, there was like a couple of videos and images circulating like Facebook of this completely sort of see-through all-screen smartphone, right? Which have like since disappeared. But I feel like the Note 10 like came the closest to that vision of the all-screen display. When I first saw it, I was just like, what? It's ridiculous, but that's for good reason, right? Because it has a, 94.7% screen-to-body ratio?
Yeah.
Which is,
like,
I think, the highest in the
yeah.
market right now. So yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, so when it comes to flagship devices, the Note 10 is almost like, not almost, it is the pinnacle. It is the flagship of the flagship. Not specifically the Note 10, but the Note in general, right? As it's in its DNA, Samsung has always made the Note out to be like a device that has everything. When remember we talked about when the iPhone was just a 3.5-inch display device, the first Note came with a 5-inch display, 5.3-inch display, and a stylus. And a lot of people were like, "What the hell? We don't need all this. Why is Samsung doing this?" And there were a lot of naysayers that were saying like, "This is too big. It's not going to fit in my pocket. I don't need a stylus. Why is Samsung doing this?" You move 10 years ahead now, and you can see that Samsung has dominated that space. There's only now one phone that has a stylus that I want to use, and that's the Note 10. But the problem is, they are so good at doing it that I find it very difficult to go wow and say, "This is awesome. This is amazing." And it's not because it's bad, but because all the previous generations, or at least the 9 and the 8, and to a certain degree the FE, aka the 7, have been very competent devices. And I think it's very difficult for them to become much better than what they are right now. So, do we go into a discussion about it not having a headphone jack and not having a micro SD card slot, and going out to say, oh, if a phone that has a similar spec, similar display, similar processor, similar everything, will be better if it has a headphone jack and a micro SD card slot? I would argue no, because at the end of the day, it's the experience. And even if the Note doesn't have an 855 processor, but it could deliver the same experience, I wouldn't mind. I've been using the Note 8 for 2 years, and I've just recently moved out from the Note 8, and I'm using a iPhone XS now and a Mate 20. My point was that, that's another point, but what I'm trying to say is that I feel that the Note is great, and it's difficult to make great good.
Isn't great better than good though?
No, it's difficult to make great greater. Like make great gooder, like better than make great better lah. That's what I'm trying to say.
Make great better.
Yeah. It's difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree on that, because when you have what is effectively the everything phone, what else do you do? Where do you go from there, right? Because I feel like the current Note is like you say, it's like a distillation of everything that people want in a smartphone, right? It's almost everything that people want in a smartphone because it's got the best everything. But then when you say that if another phone has like all of those specs as well, but isn't a Note,
and has a headphone jack
and has a headphone
micro
jack,
SD
would
card
it be a
slot.
better phone? That depends on the user though, I would have to say. Because personally, if I had like that Note, basically the Note clone, right? But it wasn't a Note and it had a headphone jack and it had micro SD expansion, but it ran on, I don't know, what's the most basic OS, like maybe stock Android. Dude, I would snap that up.
I don't know. Okay, so it depends. I don't like running on stock Android because it's stock. There's so many things I have to do. I have to install like a camera, or not a camera. I even have to install like a password manager. A lot of things that you take for granted in a phone is missing in a stock Android. So okay, we're not discussing about OS right now. But I guess my point is, if I go and say, the Note, a lot of the articles come out and say, the Note is missing a lot of things. It's missing a heart rate sensor, it's missing a headphone jack, and it's missing a micro SD card slot.
Only on the small Note 10, not the big Note 10 Plus.
The 10 Plus has a micro SD card slot, of course, but it doesn't have a headphone jack. So for me, it's like, okay, it's fine. I guess it depends on me. Depends on the user lah. But for me, it's like I don't really miss a headphone jack. So this brings me to my point. The reason why I've been using a Note 8 for the past 2 years was because of Samsung Pay. I use Samsung Pay every day. I don't mind not bringing my wallet, but I mind not bringing my phone because I cannot pay for things. But now that I've moved on to phones that don't have headphone jacks, the iPhone XS and the Mate 20 Pro, I don't miss it because I've also moved on. I now have a wireless headphone, a Bluetooth wireless headphone. And I find it more convenient to have my headphones being wireless. So it's not really a big deal for me. And it really depends because if the manufacturer can do so much with so little, right, that means we can pay less. Obviously, the Note is expensive lah. But what I'm trying to say is, the specs is not everything. It's the experience. Example, Pocophone, right? F1. Everybody, if you want the best phone for this price, you go for the Pocophone. But then my argument is that I don't want the Pocophone because of the specs, because it doesn't have a good experience. A lot of you might disagree, and some of you might do so. Put in your comments and let us know what you think. Does spec in this regard of high-end devices, does it matter? What do you think?
That is an interesting point that you bring up. But I think regarding the Pocophone, it's like a different ball game, right? Because that's a completely different price bracket. So remember how we brought up like the different price brackets? So at the high end, I completely agree. I think having purely specs is irrelevant because all the phones in that price bracket should have, that's like the baseline. That's the minimum if you're going to charge like close to 4,000 ringgit for a smartphone. So it's all about the experience. Then like you said, for the Note 10 you have features that you don't find on other phones like the S Pen, like Samsung Pay. Those are ecosystem features. And I think a lot of people, when they ask like, why is this phone so expensive? It's because you get all this, ecosystem features that add to your smartphone experience that you don't necessarily see on a spec sheet. Like those don't get compared in like table comparisons and stuff like that. Only people who actually use them will understand. So a lot of people who are like, your Pocophone has a flagship processor, and a high-end smartphone also has a flagship processor, but the Pocophone doesn't have access to.
But
all
it's shit in everything else.
Well,
the camera is terrible. It doesn't have any smart features.
It is good in one thing, and that is getting that flagship baseline down. That is the best thing about it.
So it sets the bar for that price bracket.
Yes. So it brings that is its sort of secret sauce,
that's
right?
a very good point.
Yeah. So if we were to come back to the Note, I agree that currently, I mean, if you look at it, it's like nothing that's super wow, right? For me, it was the screen that was like very impressive. But after a while, you get used to it.
I'm not saying it in a way that is terrible,
Yeah. I do. I get it because it's already so good, and it is a really good phone. I don't think you guys should get the wrong idea here. We do like the Note 10. at least for now,
It
because
is.
we haven't gotten our hands on review unit yet. But it looks really impressive on paper and stuff like that. But I think the concept of the Note, like in his earlier story about the iPhone being a 3.5-inch smartphone when it was there. So back then, that was like the norm, right? Because the iPhone has already been around for like a couple of years by then. Everybody's like, okay, so this is how things are. It's a smallish phone, you know, with like a touch screen that you use your finger to interact with. The stylus is dead on a smartphone. You don't need a keyboard, you know. That was the norm. Everybody is like, yeah, I don't need a bigger screen. Why do I need a bigger screen? Why do I need anything else? This is the best. This is how everybody should use. And that's where the Note came in and was just like, no, boom, 5.3-inch screen. Ridiculous. No other phone was that big.
Yeah.
And then it had a stylus? What?
5.3 AMOLED.
Yeah, it had a stylus?
Yeah.
What? It's ridiculous. And then it had all the top-end specs. So the thing that the Note did was it broke that norm.
Yep.
Right? It broke that norm. And I think the reason why the Note 10 doesn't feel so special is because
That is the norm.
yes, it has become its own norm
Yeah.
now. So I think it's something like Childish Gambino once said. The reason why he's killing his Childish Gambino persona is because he started out creating music because he didn't want to create a mainstream. He didn't want to be like a mainstream artist. He didn't want to make mainstream music. But what happens when his music becomes mainstream? Then, you know, it's a different kind of.
He needs to do something
exactly.
else.
So it has to die. So.
There's only so far you can go into pop before you're just pop.
I'm not saying the Note has to die.
Yeah.
Maybe it does. Maybe we need to make way for something new like the Galaxy Fold. That could be the next thing. I don't know. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, I think maybe 5 years from now, we'll have the answer for that.
Okay,
I think
so
that's very
you
exciting.
brought up like really good points. So I'm trying to like distill it in how I understood what you said, right? So at the flagship price point, which is about 3,500, 4,000 and above, specs doesn't matter. Why? Because all of the phones within that segment should have high-end specs. Whether it's Android or iOS, within their ecosystems, they should be the best. Then the question is, if, like for example, the Mate 30 has a high-end processor, if the P30 or you know the OnePlus 7 Pro have the same specs as the Note 10, why would I grab a Note 10 over everything else? And for me, it's the experience. Number one is the stylus, but okay, so number one is the stylus. Number two is Samsung Pay. Number three, obviously, is the display, and it's just there's a quality that's intangible. You cannot describe that you like. For me, Samsung has that quality with their flagship devices, and if
Cohesiveness, right?
yeah, and DeX, I think they've worked DeX to a way that it's so refined that it has become not a novelty but a utility. Once you try it, it's like, hey, this is very useful. I can get used to this, and I'm going to miss it if I don't. The problem is, it's like people get into discussions about specs. Oh, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So to me, at least in this price segment,
In the grand scheme of
the
things, yeah.
the grand scheme of things, flagship, right? If you like an iPhone XS, XS Max because of the ecosystem, because of the qualities that I've mentioned, you like it because it just feels good to you, then yeah, that's it. Or if you like a P30 Pro or the upcoming Mate 30, if you like it because of the qualities and the attributes that it makes you feel good, go for it. For me, if it's the Note 10 or the Note 10 Plus, why not? And of course, it's the price lah. Obviously, prices it fluctuate. You wait a little longer, you get a good deal, right? Especially for the Note and the Huawei.
Yeah.
So in the grand scheme of things, right? People ask me, okay, what phone we should get, right? So the default, I think my team members mentioned the default for now in this period. I think within the next 3 to 6 months, it's going to be the Note 10. It's the ultimate flagship for Android. We're not going to talk about the iPhone because this is a completely different discussion. Unless you want to jump ship. So let's say you are on iOS and you want to move to an Android platform, the Note 10 is the way to go. Or if you're on an Android platform, obviously you want to go to iOS. Maybe you want to try the 10R. Or if you have the money, go for the 10S Max. At the end of the day, within this price bracket of 3,000 and above, specs don't matter. What matters is the experience. Would you agree to that, or do you have any closing statement before we go to the next segment?
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree that specs play a very small role because all these, it's the norm, like it's the baseline. It has to have that, and if it doesn't have it, then that's a problem, right? And the reason why we always why we think that the Note will be the next default is because when we recommend stuff, we want to recommend the safe choice, right? The choice that anyone can, like if money is not an object, what is the phone that can give me something that, give me the complete experience, that I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. And usually it's the Note, and this time it's looking that way too. So yeah, I agree.
All right, so in the top end of the segment, specs don't matter. Use whatever you feel is comfortable for you, but if you don't know, if you're moving up from mid-range to a top end or a low range to a top end, the Galaxy Note 10 will not disappoint. The Note 10, Rory says, has a very nice size. I prefer the Note 10 Plus because of the 512 storage and the bigger screen. And I agree with Rory, the screen is so immersive. It's, I don't know, it's another level. I think Samsung has done tremendously well in the display department that nothing else trumps it. Okay, so we've talked about the Galaxy Note.